Muted.
Hello and good morning, MYM Insiders. How you doing today? This is Rich Harshaw, and we are here for Tactical Marketing Webinar. Today's topic is one of my, honestly, it's one of my all-time favorite because I've been known to say on many, many occasions that your most important marketing tool is your calculator, and this is the ultimate calculator call. So I'm going to warn you right now, we're going to go through a lot of heavy-duty numbers. And sometimes I get feedback from people that says, hey, it's hard for me to follow all those numbers, and I'm not really a numbers person or whatever. And I'll give you the same advice that I always give people in that situation, which is you've got to change that. You've got to change that. You've got to become a numbers person. Let me make sure I've got the right setting here. All right. And, okay, I do. Sorry about that. So you got to change that. This is all about the numbers today, and we're going to go through an interesting concept. I've been working through this concept for a lot of years, but it really came to a head maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. I was working with a client who used to talk about buying his leads. You got to buy your leads. And I was working with him at the time. He was running about $1 million a year advertising budget, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a month. And I was helping him spend it, and my job was to give him advice and suggestions on where to spend it and writing ads and all those kinds of things. And I remember there was a particular month where his sales were down, and we looked back at the month, and we'd only spent something like $55,000, and the guy became irate, saying, we have to buy our leads. If we don't spend the money, we can't buy our leads. And if we don't buy our leads, we don't get the sales. And that's a pretty basic, obvious kind of a philosophy, but I think a lot of people don't really operate that way necessarily. So I want to give you an idea called allowable marketing cost per sale. It's going to help us sort of deconstruct the numbers so we can see exactly what it is that we should be doing in terms of budgeting, okay? So we'll talk about the general concept, allowable marketing cost per sale. Why is it so important? How to figure it out. We're going to review, we're not going to cover in detail, the educational spectrum and accelerated discontentment, because these are factors that are critical in understanding how to go after the marketplace in terms of dollars spent and effort expended going after sales. And then I'll give you, I think we're going to go through 4 different case, excuse me, 4 different case studies today to help you understand exactly how this works. Now, I'm going to warn you right now, when we go through these case studies, it's heavy-duty numbers, okay? So you've been warned, so get ready, have your calculator handy, whatever the case is, just know it's coming, okay? So I like to say that your most important marketing tool is your calculator. We will prove that today. Here's the real question. How much money can you really spend on marketing and still make money? And I've found consistently with a lot of companies that you can actually afford to spend much more money than you think if you really break it down and look at it, okay? Allowable marketing cost per sale allow you to set your budget based on profitability, not arbitrarily. This is a question that comes up over and over again. People ask me, what should I set my marketing budget at? What should the percentage be? And I don't think it's really, I don't understand. How should I set my budget? You should base your budget always on profitability, based on a projection of sales and what you want to do to get there. Helps you also set your prices, because you might see that your prices need to be adjusted, or the way that you sell needs to be adjusted. I'm going to show you a detailed example of that in just a minute. Helps you look at your business from a big picture, not just, like I said, what's my arbitrary percentage that I should spend on marketing. See that you can probably spend more money than you thought on new customer acquisition. This is a lot more proactive than just setting a budget. It allows you to say, okay, what is my goal? What am I trying to go after? And let me set my budget accordingly, and then go out and run after those sales instead of arbitrarily setting a budget and seeing what happens, okay? So let's take a look. Steps for computation. First, determine the lifetime value of a customer. You know how to set a lifetime value of a customer, right? It depends on your type of industry. If you sell sunrooms, the lifetime value of the customer very well may just be whatever you make from them on that sunroom itself, because you don't normally sell a lot of repeat sunrooms. Nobody's putting a second and third sunroom on. On the other hand, if you sell sunrooms, but you also sell windows and gutter protection and roofs, then there may be some additional longer-term value of that client. I know a lot of window companies will sell partial window jobs and then come in later and sell the rest of the job. So there may be some ongoing residual value to that customer. That's something for you to determine and to understand. And every business owner needs to look at their customer base and say, okay, based on what we do, what we sell and how we sell it, and the kinds of things that we have for sale, what can we expect from a customer? Is it a one-time purchase? Is it a 2- or 3-time purchase? Is it ongoing? Is it something that we can count on for a long time? If you look at retail stores, they count on long-term repeat business, right? If you opened a restaurant and we're counting on somebody to come in one time and then never come back, you'd go broke almost immediately, which makes it so maddening that so many restaurants and other sort of retail shops put so little effort into proactively gathering information on their customers so they can go back to them. You've got to understand who these people are so that you can then reach back out to them and solicit them back in for repeat over and over and over again. It's mind-boggling that companies don't do that to a greater extent than they do. But you've got to determine the lifetime value of your customer. Next, assign a percentage or a dollar amount to marketing. So if you determine that the lifetime value of your customer is $20,000, you've got to look at it and say, okay, how much of that $20,000, and more specifically, gross profit, right? Because the reality is it doesn't matter what the sales figure is, the top line dollar. It really only matters what the gross profit is. So if you've got a $20,000 lifetime value with a $10,000 lifetime gross profit, then you've got to decide what percentage of that are you willing to spend on marketing. Set a target number of customers or a range, and then consider your cash flow. You can't spend money you don't have. Sometimes you can, but I don't really advise it. Set your budgets accordingly. Choose your marketing activities. Now, I want to give you just a quick example before we get into the wall drug aspect of this. This concept of allowable marketing costs per sale and determining these numbers. And again, please hang in there with me. I'm going to give you 4 specific concrete examples of this. But it started about 5 or 6 years ago, training it this particular way. When I was on a phone call, one of our Tuesday morning ad clinics, with one of our customers who was a real estate company that also did, they did like residential brokerage, but they also did rentals, and they were a management company, and they would try to find people that maybe instead of selling their house would rent their house, and then they would take a monthly management fee from these people. And I got to talking to them about it, and they were willing to spend very, very little money on marketing to go out and solicit these new customers. And I got to talking to them, and I asked them, what's the lifetime value of a customer? They'd never really sat down and thought about that. And their average monthly fee, gosh, it's going back a ways now. I can't really remember. Let's say it was $250 or something like that, $200. I don't really remember. Let's just say it was $200. And the average number of months that the house was rented was something like 36 months. Well, if you take the 36 months times the $200, you got a client that's worth $7,200. And of course, there's cost involved with that, and you've got to have employees and all those kinds of things. But that's the number of dollars that their average contract is worth. Now, again, I'm confessing up front that I'm relaying a story from several years ago, and I don't remember the exact numbers, so forgive me for fuzzy math. But you get the idea and the point. But here was the interesting thing when I talked to him about it. I said, how much of that, bullet point number 2 on your screen right now, how much of that would you be willing to spend on marketing to get that customer? And it can be assigned as a percentage or a dollar amount, like it says on the screen. Would you be willing to spend 10%? That would be $720. Now, when you say 10%, it sometimes sounds a little more friendly than saying $720. And they very quickly said, no, we don't want to spend more than, I don't know what they said, a couple $100, a very small amount. I said, well, let me put it to you this way, bullet point number 3. let's set a target number of customers that you wanted to go get. Let's say that the number of new customers was 50 new customers, and they're going to be worth a lifetime average of $7,200, which is $360,000. Okay? Consider your cash flow. Do you have money available to spend right now? What kinds of things can we do to reach out? And the point of this call right now is not to necessarily go through those activities, but here was the question. How much would you be willing to spend? And they said, well, it would be very little. So I said, look, let's take a $7,200 contract. If I had, let's just use a smaller number, 10 contracts for $72,000. If I had 10 typical contracts that were going to be worth $72,000 over the course of 3 years, and I had them in my hand, and I was going to hand them to you, and you could service these clients, and they would pay you the money, would you be willing to pay me for these contracts? Well, yeah. Well, how much would you be willing to pay me? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, would you be willing to pay me $100 for these 10 contracts? Well, yeah, okay. What about $200? Well, I guess so. And then we just go up from there. And I go and I push it to a point where it starts to become uncomfortable. Would you pay me, if it was 10%, it'd be $7,200? And they start really, really balking at that. No, I wouldn't pay $7,200. And I start to think, well, why not? You wouldn't pay $7,200 for 10 contracts worth $72,000. You wouldn't hand over a check for $7,200 for $72,000 in business. Now you got to figure out your profitability, right? You got to know what your numbers are. You got to understand your margins. You got to know how much it's going to cost to service that $72,000 worth of business. Let's assume for a minute that it's 50% cost and it's 50% profit. Okay, so at $72,000, you've got $32,000. $32,000. How much of that would you be willing? Would you be willing to spend 10% of that? Would you give me $3,200 for these contracts? And they said, no, we wouldn't do it. And I said, you're telling me that you wouldn't give me $3,200 cash right now for 10 contracts worth $32,000 in profit. What are you going to do with that $3,200? You're going to try to put it in the stock market and make 10 times your money in the next 3 years? Good luck. And they sort of understood. So this is where we need to understand our numbers, okay? So walled drug, I'm not going to go through this in detail. We just really don't have time to go through it. I think you understand the concept of walled drug. If you've been around me for any length of time, you understand that that's the idea of hitting the prospect again and again and again and again and again. The billboards at walled drug, there was 100 billboards in a 50-mile stretch. The conversion ratio of people stopping at walled drug was 70%. Okay, so the idea here is not that repetition causes people to stop down and buy. It's why does repetition cause people to stop down and buy? And it can be summarized on this chart called accelerated discontentment. And again, this is by way of review. If you haven't ever seen this before, and I don't know, maybe there's a different webinar you should be on first. But the way it works is this. Over time, the horizontal axis from left to right represents time. Each one of these tick marks represents, let's call it a month. And then we've got a level of contentment that somebody has with their current situation as it relates to whatever the product or service is that you sell, whether it be your pool service or your blender that you have or your laptop computer or your vacation situation, anything that you could buy. So at the top here it says I've had it. That's the red line. That's where somebody is sufficiently frustrated with their situation that they change it. They take definitive, immediate action to change. Down here where it says fine, this line here, this is the line where people are just fine with their situation. They're not happy. They're not upset. They're just fine. They're not thinking about it. It's like this cup that I have in my hand here. It says Guaranteed Fountain. On the other side it says Quick Trip. It's a gas station nearby. It's an insulated cup. Every morning I use it when I make a smoothie, and then I put it in there because it's insulated. And that cup, I've been using it for years, and it's not particularly beautiful, and it's not particularly anything. It's just a cup. It's fine. It's not great. It's not bad. It's not causing me any problems. I don't love it. If it got run over by a truck, I would not be sad. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? It's fine. And then down here at the bottom it says bliss. This is where you're so stinking happy that you would never dream of changing. That would be like if I loved this cup so much that if it got destroyed, I would go into depression for a week. Now, here's what you've got to understand is depending on what the thing is that's for sale or what the situation is, people's level of contentment, satisfaction, however you want to say it, will fluctuate over time. Okay? This could be my satisfaction even with something that's not for sale. This could be my satisfaction with my son's grades. He's got, he comes home with, he doesn't come home with progress reports anymore. We can just check it online. So let's say I check online and I see that he's got 3 zeros and made a 25 on a quiz. So I get a little bit upset. That's what this is right here. And then over time it goes back down towards, it's okay, and then another, missed assignment, and then right here I go down more into the bliss territory. This is because he aced a test, he's doing really good, and he's doing good for a while. Then he comes back, and over here he bombs, his semester exam. Over here, he fails for the year. And I get upset, and I say, I'm going to, I don't know, change schools, I don't know, whatever definitive action I would take. Here's the point. This accelerated discontentment, this line of contentment can relate to anything. It can, like I said, it could be your pool service. It could be somebody's contentment with their kitchen or their roof. And the storm blows through and the roof starts leaking, and they suddenly, instantly become extremely discontent because it's leaking, and they have to take definitive, immediate action, okay? So here's what happens. There's exclamation points at these inflection points where people are discontent, which represents situations in their life that cause them to be hypersensitive to that situation. In this case of my son, it could be a failed test, it could be a 0 on a paper, it could be a quiz grade that was poor, or any other negative thing. And here's what you've got to understand as a marketer, is that these elements of discontentment, these incidences, are completely outside of your control. So you can't control, if you're a pool service company, you can't control when the other pool service company forgets to show up or over-treats the pool and the kids' eyes burn with chlorine, or when, they show up while they were supposed to be on vacation and find the pool guy having a party at their house, right? All these things that could be potentially negative. You can't control that as a marketer, and you have to understand that those things are going to naturally occur over time. Your job then is to be consistent, frequent marketer, represented by these triangles at the bottom in pink, and as you do that, your message will resonate more when they become hypersensitive to these incidences. So here's what happens. The pink line represents their level of contentment in the accompaniment of the marketing effort that is frequent and consistent. So what happens is the incidences that seemed to be at a level 3, when you're sitting there continually marketing to them, making them hypersensitive and aware of that situation actually seems worse than it was before. So over here on inflection point incident number 1, what was a 3 becomes a 3.5 in terms of level of pain. On the second one, what was a level 2 becomes a level 3. Why? Because we've had more time to influence them. Over here on the third one, what was normally going to be a 5 level becomes a 7 level, and the 10 level, of course, is still a 10 level. Now, here's what's happened. In the second and third incident, we've had sufficient time to give them solutions, and when they have this incident occurs, they're more likely to turn to us because they're aware of who we are. We've been consistently messaging them that we have a solution. But here's what we have not done in this environment. We have not caused them to take action any earlier. Look, it took until the 4th incident when it was a level 10 incident. Now, they are very likely going to call us because we've been consistently marketing to them with hopefully an identity-based coherent message for a year, 2, 3 years. But it didn't happen any sooner. But if we up the frequency, like the green triangles represent, then here's what happens is we actually not only increase their or accelerate their discontentment, we get them to make a change even quicker on the 3rd incident instead of the 4th, okay? So this is kind of what we're dealing with when we're out there in the marketplace doing marketing. We've got to understand that at any given moment when our marketing message lands on somebody's eyes or ears, they're going to be at different levels of discontentment. That's why you can send a mailer out or advertise in the newspaper or on the radio, TV, anything for years, and suddenly somebody calls you that has been hearing that message for years. Well, why didn't they call last year, the year before, the year before? And the answer is they didn't have an incident occur in their life that caused them to have sufficient pain that made them want to change, okay? So all of this is simply instructing us that we can't expect that anytime we send out a marketing message that instantly, just because it's a great message, that everybody's going to fall over and call us and give us their money. It's going to take some time, okay? The educational spectrum suggests that people are going to study, evaluate, and look at their options before they buy, okay? Prospects don't buy right away because their situation is fine in their current opinion, going back to accelerated discontentment, right? They just got the idea. They need more time to process it, or they want to look at other companies first, or they have objections that haven't been overcome yet, or they don't think they can afford it. Keyword, think. Next, they didn't like your company maybe. You didn't have exactly what they were looking for. They just didn't feel comfortable on some level. Maybe they didn't even know you were an option. Did you ever think about that? They go to buy a new roof and your name never even came up. That's a problem. Okay, so all of this is really by way of review to get to the topic that we really want to cover, which is allowable marketing cost per sale. And I want you to understand all of that because it's going to play into the marketing that we're going to put in place for these companies. So the first one I'm going to talk to you about is a company called University Values. This is a company that was started in 2010. I was an advisor to this company because it was started by a very young man who was actually a sophomore at the University of Utah when he started this company. He had read the book Monopolize Your Marketplace and asked me for some advice, and I helped him out a little bit for free. It's a coupon book, okay? Coupon style booklet, and I think they've since transitioned this to an online, app-based phone coupon thing. I haven't really kept up with them in the last few years, but it doesn't matter. The principles and the point of how this works is exactly identical regardless of how their booklet works. But at the time, coupon-style booklet targeted to college students at University of Utah and BYU because he obviously lived in Utah, okay? The cost to print the book was a 32-page book, was $25,000 if they did it, it was $7,400, if they did it in a quantity of 25,000, but as the quantity went up to 40,000, they were able to get a better print price, okay? So what they would do is they would go out and they would print 40,000 of these, and then they would distribute 10,000 of them per month so that there was always these booklets in circulation. They didn't want to just go dump 40,000 out. First of all, there wasn't enough students to justify that many per month, but they also wanted to make sure that even if the student got it this month, that they got a fresh book the next month, so they always had a fresh supply of these coupons, they didn't forget about it, etc. Okay? So they priced it based on selling for 1, 2, or 3 semesters because there's a 3-semester track at both of those universities. I think fall, winter, and then spring/summer. Okay? So they would go out and they would tell their prospective customers, look, you can buy a quarter-page ad for $359 or $679 if you buy 2 semesters, or $959. So it's a little bit better value if you buy all 3 semesters. This was their current pricing structure when they proposed this and asked me to look at it. Or you can buy a half-page ad, which is going to be more expensive, or a full-page ad, which is still more expensive. But you'll notice, again, on all 3 ad sizes, you get a discount as you buy 2 or 3 semesters. Okay, so they weren't selling a lot of ads. That was their result. They only sold 4 or 5 total pages. They were trying to sell 32, mostly getting 1 semester commitments for the quarter-page ad. So I sat down with them. I said, look, if you sell out your entire book, this is kind of what you would have to do. You'd have to sell 6 full-page customers. So that would be 6 pages out of the 32, which would pay you $7,194 per semester. You'd have to sell 12 half-page customers. Now, obviously, they could have sold 7 or 8 or 9 full-page, but I was just sort of looking at it saying, here's a possible case scenario. 12 half-page customers, and that would also be 6 pages, half-page times 12, right? And that would get you $8,500 per semester. And then you'd have to sell the most frequent thing you sell, which is the quarter page, and you'd have to get 76 customers, and that would take the other 19 pages for a total of $27,000. To do that, you would have to sell 94 different customers, and that would cost $42,986, or that's how much revenue it would get you. So that's what I told them that they were up against. Here's what you're trying to accomplish right now. You're trying to sell 76 customers at a total of 94 customers at a total of almost $43,000 in sales. Best case scenario for the year was $128,000, basically $129,000 in total revenue. Okay, and they agreed that the likelihood of that happening was basically zero. That was just, it was too big of a bite, too many customers to have to fill the book. So I helped them understand their numbers. Would you rather sell fewer full-page ads or more quarter and half-page ads? Now, I want you to think about this for a second. If you're in their shoes, what would you rather sell? Now, I'm not saying, hey, you always have to do it exactly this way, or your thought process should be exactly this way. I'm simply asking them and you to think about it. You know, this comes up with remodeling companies all the time. Would you rather sell one $50,000 kitchen or 25 gutter protection jobs at $2,000 each? And there's merit both ways, and there's pros and cons. I understand that. I really do. I'm not saying, hey, if you sell 25 gutter protection jobs at $2,000, that's the dumbest thing I could ever imagine. I'm simply asking you to consider the question. That's all. Would you rather sell fewer full-page ads or more quarter and half-page ads? And I suggested to them they might want to look at selling more full-page ads, but they had to understand their numbers. So I said, look, let's set prices based on selling full pages on a 3-semester commitment. Okay? Let's take away some of the choice, and let's make this easier for people to understand. Okay? So if they're going to distribute 10,000 booklets per month, that's 120,000. If they sell it on a monthly basis instead of a, hey, we're going to sell you a 40,000 run, one semester. Remember, there was 3 semesters. That's 4 months. 10,000 books per month times 4 months is 40,000 for, you know, some $100. Let's just make it an annual contract and give them a monthly price, okay? So to get the best price and an affordable price for them, they had to print 40,000 books. Remember that? So the total print cost is going to be $26,400. That's 3 runs of 40,000 each times 22 cents per booklet. That's where we come up with this number. Okay, are you tracking with me? I told you there's going to be a lot of numbers, and they're going to get worse, okay? Total production and distribution, the graphic design, getting them passed out on campus, they have to pay people to do that, $18,000, a total hard cost of $44,400. In other words, no matter what they sell, whether they sell it in quarter-page ads, eighth-page ads, full-page ads, whatever, it's going to cost them $44,400 to run that from a hard cost standpoint, not including overhead, not including sales commissions, just in the hard cost. This is important. I recommended that they set their price at 4 times cost, which is $177,600. Now, if you remember earlier, I'm going to go back a slide. Here we go. Their best case scenario was $128,000 at their current prices if they sold, you know, 6 full-page ads, 12 half-page ads, 76 quarter-page ads. Their total best case scenario was $128,000. I'm just going to call it $129,000. Guess what their cost would be in that scenario? Same thing as on this slide, right? It was still going to be $44,400, which is 34%. So I'm going to take their percentage of cost from 34% down to 25% by simply upping their price. Basically what I'm going to do is raise their prices, but I'm not going to just raise their prices. Here I go. I told you this is going to be, I'm going to go back one more time. I'm not going to just raise their full page price. Where did that go? From $2,899 to, you know, whatever, $3,700, I'm going to make it a lot more attractive. So bear with me as I go through this. I'm going to go back to where I was. Okay, this is where I was. Set price at 4 times cost. This is daunting because here's what's happening. They're having very little success selling. Oh, hang on, I got a little background noise. Let me take care of that.
Muted.
They're having very little success selling in the first place. And I'm coming in and I'm basically telling them you need to raise your price by, what, $50,000 per year total. And their attitude was, I don't understand how that's going to work. Well, let's take a look. If you divide that number by 31 customers, now why 31 customers? Because it's a 32-page book with a cover, and there's 31 other pages. Okay, that's why the number 31. It's not because it's 31 flavors like Baskin Robbins. It's because it's a 32-page book minus the 1 page for the cover. So that's $5,729. So basically, here's what I know. I want a $5,700 commitment from each customer. If you divide that by 12 months, it comes down to $477.42. So we set the list price at $599 per month to advertise in our book. We'll pass out 10,000 of these books every single month on the campuses to the students in the dormitories. We'll guarantee full distribution. And then we can discount it to $4.99 a month. We can run a special. We can offer it to them, whatever. If all the ads sell out, it's $133,200 in gross profit. Sales commissions might be 10% of that. So that leaves $120,000 after sales commissions and hard cost. So here's the key question. This is the question of the day, and everything that we've done up to this point is coming to this single point. How much of that are you willing to spend on marketing? Because if we don't know how much we're going to make, which is $120,000 a year, we don't know how much we're going to be willing to spend on marketing. Now, I'm going to point something out here that's probably obvious to some of you who are paying close attention, and maybe not to those of you who are sort of paying casual attention. This is for 1 year. And the answer is it's going to kind of depend on how well it works for a given advertiser. Let's assume that it works well enough to renew for half of the advertisers, but the other half either didn't feel like it worked well enough, or they just, you know, whatever. A couple probably will go out of business, you know, some canning company, whatever. But you know how it goes, right? Some are just going to quit. Let's just say half. If half of them stick around for the second year, and out of that half, you get another 70% of those to stick around for a third year, and 70% of those to stick around for the fourth year. No, I don't know what the numbers are. Nobody can see the future. We're not Karnak, the Incredible or whatever, but we can make educated guesses, and we can make educated projections. Then we can see that there's actually more money available because the sales and the lifetime revenue of some of these customers, and if we average it out, I mean, let's just average it out. Let's say that 50% of the customers drop out after year 1, and the other half stay on for 1 additional year, so that every 2 years our business completely turns over. That's unrealistic, but let's just use it as an example. That means that we have $180,000 in gross profit over 2 years. How much would you be willing to spend? Well, remember this whole thing, accelerated discontentment. Maybe you walk in to try to sell somebody something, and they've seen all the sales pitches, and their budget's been spent, and it's just not a good time, and it's easy to get turned down, right? Well, let's take a look at it. Would you be willing to spend 15% on marketing? Now, I'm not talking sales because we've already accounted for the sales commissions, right? Now, we haven't decided what we're going to spend the money on yet. I'm simply asking you, would you be willing to spend it? Or in other words, if you spent 15%, which is $18,000, that's the same thing as the question that I hypothetically asked the real estate company earlier. If I handed you these contracts worth, what was it, $180,000 in sales and $120,000 in gross profit after sales commissions, would you be willing to hand me a check right now for $18,000? Here's the advertising contracts. They're contracts. These people are obligated via this contract to pay you for a year at $4.99 a month, each of them, 31 of them. Would you be willing to hand me a check for $18,000? And the answer is, even if cash flow was terrible and you didn't have it, wouldn't you beg, borrow, or steal the $18,000 to get the $120,000? And the answer is, of course you would. It's a no-brainer. Would you be willing to spend 20% or 25% or 33% or 50%? You say, well, there's no way I would spend 50%. Well, I don't know if I would be so quick to discount that, because if you spent that 50%, but it actually turns out that it actually is 60 or 70% that stick around for a second year, and another 70% of those stick around for another year, and some of the ones you didn't sell the first year, you now sell the second year, right? You following me? I hope you're following me. Okay? They had bad cash flow. They didn't really have $60,000 or $15,000 or $18,000 to spend. But let's take a look at what a marketing plan might be. 31 customers are needed. So what if we identified 500 possible customers? Is this hard to do? And the answer is no, this is not hard to do. We go to all the yogurt stores and all the pizza shops and all the tanning places and all the student bookstores and all the crap, I don't know what kind of places. I don't go to college. So whatever those places are that they normally are selling, and you stick them on a list. It's that simple. And then wall drug them. Build a case for the effectiveness and the ROI of the publication. Okay? You've got to have an identity for your company. That's a whole different discussion. We haven't talked about that today, but it doesn't matter. What it matters is you have one, and then you start to pound them. Send each of the 500 prospects 2 postcards a week at 75 cents each. That's a worst-case scenario based on digital printing for 12 weeks. Okay? That's 24 total postcards over the course of 12 weeks. Total cost is going to be $18 per prospect. It's going to be $9,000. Now, I'm not saying do that. I'm not saying this will work. I'm not saying this is effective. I'm saying, what do the numbers look like? People are so quick to dismiss stuff and say, well, you know, I don't think that's going to work. I don't want to do that, or I don't, blah, blah. All these, I'm just freaking looking at it. It's called possibility thinking. What if we did this? What would happen? What if we did have 24 touches that were well orchestrated, well organized, well articulated, and we hit them to the right person, 500 of them, laser focused, every Planet 10, every Hoagie Yogi, every, you know, restaurant that makes sense, and we hit them again and again and again and again and again, 2 times a week. And then we split that list among the 4 salespeople that they already had that were running around doing nothing, and now they're showing up on the heels of these 10 and then 15 and then 24 postcards, and they've got the information and the identity, and the door's already been opened by the marketing. And we said, look, here's 125 each. Well, if you're a salesperson, and I give you 125 prospects, let's see, if you were to take 1 month to do that, 22 business days divided by 125 prospects, you'd have to hit 6 a day. Now, remember, this is local area stuff. It's not like you're flying to Pittsburgh to meet with your important client. All you're doing is saying, let's go drive down the street to the yogurt shop, and then let's drive further down the street to the taco stand, and then let's drive further down the street to the next guy. Could you hit 6 in a day if you were freaking hungover? Yes. It's not that hard. See, when you're showing up cold, and you're showing up uninvited, and you're showing up as just another ad salesman, instead of the guy who's been wall drugging them, overcoming their objections, hitting all the hot buttons, helping them understand what the case is, making your identity strong, now you show up as that guy. And I spent $9,000. My sales commissions that are going to go to these 4 people were already calculated before I ever started this exercise. If you called on 10 per day, you could hit the entire list in less than 2 weeks. Okay? We need 31 out of the 500 customers. That's it. And we let them know, we've got 31 slots. Do you want to be in there? We reserve a maximum of 2 Mexican restaurants, 2 hamburger stores, 3, you know, whatever, 2 yogurt shops, and 2 canning salons and whatever the categories are, and you use a little scarcity, and you're looking for companies that can afford a $500 a month advertising commitment with you. You run the ROI for them. How many coupons are going to be redeemed? We're going to send out 10,000. How many coupons would need to be redeemed for it to be worthwhile for you? What's the upsell on the coupon? What's the cost of not having that customer come in? Okay? Let's move to the next example. These next examples will go a little bit quicker. This is a machine called a ROM. You might have seen this advertised in airline flight magazines and other direct response. It's an exercise machine that claims that you can get a full body workout in 4 minutes per day, and it's sold supposedly to the uber rich. Okay, $14,615. That price may have changed by now, but that's what it was at least. Their literature states, we will not call you. We have found that if people don't just buy it, any sales efforts are fruitless, so either buy it or don't. Now, I'm paraphrasing what their literature states, but that's basically what it's saying. They're not going to call you. People are just going to buy it. They state in their literature that 1 out of 50 people that orders their information kit will buy it. That's 5%. Excuse me, that's not 5%. That's 2%. How much margin is in a $14,615 machine, do you think? My guess is a lot. They're already allocating all of their marketing dollars towards new sales, right? Hang on just 1 second. All righty. I didn't like that. It's down 2%, not 5%. They're already allocating all of their marketing dollars towards the new sales, okay? Because they don't do any follow-up. None, according to them. Now, they could be lying, but I don't think so because I ordered their information kit and they never called me. They never emailed me. They never sent a mailer. They never did anything. They were true to their word. They didn't try to follow up. They sent me the stuff and they said either buy it or don't. We don't care. If you assume a lead cost of $100, then we can extrapolate that their allowable marketing cost per sale is $5,000. In other words, they're willing to spend $5,000, $100 per lead times 50 leads to get 1 sale, so that's $5,000. That's probably pretty close to what they're doing. Now, I don't know that for a fact. I'm not inside their corporate headquarters looking at their books, but let's just use this as a thought exercise, okay? Now, my question is as follows. If they're willing to spend $5,000 per sale on marketing, why not spend that same amount to nurture the 49 leads that didn't buy? And they said, well, we know that people aren't going to buy. We've tried it. Well, how have they tried it, I wonder? Do they just call them? They can't get a hold of people, so they get discouraged? Well, why would somebody not buy it right away? Well, there's going to be a certain percentage of the prospects that simply will never be able to afford a $14,000 exercise machine, okay? That's just point blank the case, right? But you got to understand one other piece of critical information here. What is it? They tell you right up front in the ad that it's expensive. So yeah, you're going to get some curious tire kickers that would never be able to afford it, but you're probably going to get a fair number of people that could afford it that are just curious, but they don't really convert after the first marketing push. So what if we set a target of selling 2 out of the 49 that don't close right away? That would give us a budget of $10,000. If we had a budget of $10,000 to market to 49 people, now remember, if we sold 2 machines, we're going to make $28,000 in revenue, right? Not just the $10,000 back. So we're setting a budget of $10,000 to market to 49 people. That's $204.08 per prospect. The way you get that, it's very simple. You take 10,000 divided by 49, boom, $204.08. So if we sent postcards out at 55 cents in bulk, we could send 371 postcards to each of the 49 prospects. 371. If you sent 1 per week for 371 weeks, that would be 7.1 years. You don't think that somebody in 7 years of getting something every freaking week? Now, I'm not telling you send 371 postcards. I'm simply calculating what budget is available and what could potentially be done with that kind of budget, okay? What else could you do with a $10,000 budget? Well, how about you send one postcard per week for, what is that, a year, and you would still have $177 left per prospect. You could send follow-up DVDs. You could send newsletters. You could have telemarketers call every couple months. You could send promotional products, you know, tchotchkes. We're going to run out of things to spend money on before we run out of money. It's hard to follow up that much with that few people with that big of a budget. It's hard to spend the money. Okay? Are you starting to figure out where I'm going with this and how this whole thing works? It's all about understanding your numbers. Remember the educational spectrum and accelerated discontentment. There's a reason I reviewed it at the beginning. Is I need you to understand and realize that things are going to happen in the future over the course of the next 6 months, 12 months, 18, 24, 36 months, whatever the case is, that it's going to cause people to have an adjustment to their level of contentment, and they're going to become less content. And they're going to go to the gym, and they're going to get sick of working out at the gym. They're going to get sick of the travel. They're going to be tired of how hard it is and how much time it involves. And then that postcard's going to come for that 4-minute exercise machine again and 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 again. And after a while, they're going to say, "Holy crap, I'll try it." That's all I'm saying. It's not that difficult to understand this. Okay? Go through 2 more examples and then we'll be done. Retirement grade insurance. Now, I'm not going to go into huge detail about what investment grade insurance is, but it's insurance that's really an investment, okay? Lifetime value to the agency that sells it is $21,600 in commissions. They get 150% of the first year premium paid up front by the insurance carrier, which is $18,000. Whoops. And then they get a residual of about 3% per year for 10 years, which is $360 per year. So it's very obviously heavily front-end loaded. About 55% is paid to the agent, and the other 45% is retained by the agency, if that makes any sense to you. The gross margin then to the agency is $8,100 that they get up front. Okay? If you're willing to spend 20% of that on marketing, then that's basically $2,000. It's actually about 25%, isn't it? So let's do a target. And I've given you an example of following up with the ROM customers, going to your old customers or your old prospects that didn't finalize. But we can also do this in terms of new lead generation. If you target 100 sales in 3 months, okay, if we're trying to target 100 sales, now start doing some math with me here. If you're going to target 100 sales in 3 months, here's what we know, that 100 sales times $8,100 in gross margin is $810,000. That's a pretty nice little chunk of money. Would you be willing to spend the $2,000 per sale? Okay? $200,000 in marketing costs. How would you spend $200,000? That's the question. Okay? Well, let's take a look. How would you spend it? If we had a 5% expected conversion ratio of lead to sale, 1 out of 20, to get 100 sales, we would need 2,000 leads. Are you with me? 100 sales, we need 2,000 leads. That's $100 per lead. This is actually looking pretty doable. To get a $100 per lead is not all that difficult. We could do radio or TV or direct mail. We could do any of those things. We've just got to understand that we've got to hit them again and again and again. Accelerated discontentment, okay? I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there. It's pretty self-evident at this point. Let's go to one more quick example. Dentists. Dentists are what we call file cabinet millionaires. File cabinet millionaires. What that means is you go to the dentist, you sit in the chair to get a checkup, and the dentist comes back and says, hey, we discovered that there's some problems with your teeth, and here's what they are. And then they prescribe what they call a treatment plan. Treatment plan could be any type of treatment, whether it's crowns or fillings or complicated expensive stuff or simple, easy, inexpensive stuff, whatever it is. But the average dentist that's been in practice for any amount of time has literally over $1 million worth of uncompleted treatment plans in their file cabinet, stuff that they told their patients they need to do that their patients just didn't actually come back and do. So the key for a dentist is, yeah, they need new patients to come in all the time, but they also need to make the patients that are not completing their treatment plans to simply come in and do them, okay? So 2,000 patients in 2.5 years who have unscheduled treatment plans. Average treatment plan is $2,000, $4 million sitting in the file cabinet. Now, this is some patients that have, $10,000, $20,000, and some of those patients have very little that they need to do. But it's a $4 million asset sitting in that file cabinet if they can reach out and liberate it. So let's assume that you can get 25% to come in. Some percentage of that $4 million is going to come in anyway, right? You told the guy he needed to get, whatever thing done to his teeth, and a year and a half later it breaks and it becomes an emergency situation. He has to come in and do it. So some of these people are going to come in, but some of them will never come in if you don't prod them and poke them and get them to do it. That would be $1 million of the $4 million in sales. We get 25% to come in due to the marketing. How much of that $1 million would you be willing to spend? See how this works? Allowable marketing cost per sale. How much of the $1 million that you stand to gain would you be willing to spend on marketing to get them in? Would you be willing to spend 5 or 10%, 15%, 20 or 25%? Well, let's assume we'll spend 20%. That's 20, it's not 20, 20%. Where were we at? $1 million. That's $200,000. Man, why do I have that in there? I'm going to fix that. I guarantee you right now. Here we go. See, I told you. It's $200,000 to market to 2,000 patients. $100 per patient. Here we go again. It's the same thing over and over. See, it's a very laser-focused, tightly knit target market. This isn't just going out to the general public. It's the same 2,000 people. We know who they are. We know where they live. We know what their phone number is. We know what their email address is, okay? We send out the postcards. We could send them 182 postcards. And it starts to get done really fast because, I mean, think about it, sending 182 postcards. These are people that already know and trust that doctor. They know they need the services. We've just got to remember, why would they not come in for this service? And the answer is either they're scared, or they just weren't thinking about it, or it's too expensive and they don't think they can afford it, okay? So we just got to go hit them again and again. Remember this, you can probably spend more on marketing than you think you can. You have to look at the big picture, understand the lifetime value, determine how much of your gross profit you're willing to spend, make sure you have the cash flow. You can do this for new lead generation, rehash situations, especially marketing situations, anything. Okay? That's how it works. I'll take any questions you have. If you want to raise your hand, I'd be happy to talk to you. Or if you'd like to type something into the comment box, I can talk to you that way as well. So I'll give you just a second to ask any questions, and then if there are none, we'll conclude for the day. Okay, I'm scrolling through the attendees. I don't see any hands up. And I don't see any questions, so I'll give you the proverbial countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Well, there you have it. Next week, I will be off. I will not be in town, so hence we will have no webinar, but we will be back with you the following week. So look forward to talking to you then. If there's anything we can help you out with in the meanwhile, don't hesitate to contact our office. And thanks so much for participating and for being a customer of Monopolize Your Marketplace. See ya. Thanks. Bye now.